Last day, we actually talked about Halo, this book, and how even though the first chapter in the book was very good, the book itself was awful. And there was this conversation that we've had, which is, well, because you wrote a good chapter does not mean you are going to write a good book. Uh, Essentially, a good chapter or a good chapter one helps in writing a good book, but remember, a good chapter one does not equal to a good book, and you're going to have to fight the battle the entire way through. It's a whole mental game. And so, In the Name of the Wind it's another one of my favorite books. And even though it's over twice, like 250% the size of Halo, I have read this book twice and I have enjoyed it each time. In fact, I've enjoyed it more each time. And so this is the thing about this book is that it has a great chapter one. And on top of that, the chapter one is followed by a great chapter two. And that great chapter two is followed by great chapter three, etc., etc., etc. And this is what I'm talking about. This is precisely what I'm talking about. The Name of the Wind is one of the best fantasy books throughout history because of how it is consistently good. It is consistently good from chapter 1 to chapter 2 to chapter 3 to chapter 4. The list just goes on and on and on and on. And that is not something that can be overlooked. If you look at, for example, if you read this particular chapter, chapter 1, or sorry, the prologue, you'll see it was night again, the Waystone Inn lay in silence, and it was a silence of 3 parts. This 3 parts is actually the inciting incident for this subplot that is very crucial for the story, right? And so the most obvious part was a hollow, echoing quiet made by things that were lacking. Like it's awesome. It's awesome. First of all, the prose is beautiful. As I've said, like good prose for chapter 1 is always a requirement. Even if you're not a prose-driven author, you have to have great prose for chapter 1. This is why people often say, like, hey, chapter 1, that's a great, that's great prose, but what about chapter 5? What about chapter 10? This is what separates authors who are considered to have good prose from authors who are considered to have bad prose, because those who have bad prose have good prose only in the beginning, while those who have good prose have a great book with a great prose. Anyhow, the chapter goes on, and there's a lot of different things that come up. Inside the Waystone, a pair of men huddled at one corner at the bar. The third silence, he goes to explain, was not an easy thing to notice, okay? If you listen for an hour, you might begin to feel it in the wooden floor underfoot and in the rough, splintering barrels behind the bar. It was in the weight of the black stone hearth that held the heat of a long dead fire. It was in the slow back and forth of a white linen cloth rubbing along the grain of the bar, and it was in the hands of the man who stood there, polishing a stretch of mahogany that already gleamed in the lamplight. The man had true red hair, red as flame. His eyes were dark and distant, and he moved with the subtle certainty that comes from knowing many things, okay? The Waystone was his, just as the third silence was his. This was appropriate as it was the greatest silence of the 3, wrapping the others inside itself. It was deep and wide as an autumn's ending. It was heavy as a great river's smooth stone. It was the patient cut flower sound of a man who is waiting to die. And, this is followed by chapter 1. Okay, so this is followed by chapter 1. In chapter 1, something very important is established for the story, and that is the name of the wind. So this old fella tells the youngsters around the story. Okay, this chapter 1 also, may I add, it takes place before the man who's waiting to die arrives, and so he establishes in this particular chapter 1, Patrick Rothfuss, the name of the wind. And so here he goes to explain, but Taborlin knew the names of all things, and so all things were his to command. He said to the stone, break, and the stone broke. The wall tore, blah blah blah. He continues. This is awesome. Taborlin fell, but he did not despair, for he knew the name of the wind, and so the wind obeyed him. As you can see in chapter 7 of beginnings and the name of things, okay, eventually, Kavoth informs. Kavoth shook his head. No, it began at the university. I went to learn magic of the sort they talk about in stories. And here, that stories becomes very important. Taborlin, right? Magic like Taborlin the Great. I wanted to learn the name of the wind. Because Taborlin could control the name of the wind. I wanted fire and lightning. I wanted answers to 10,000 questions and access to the archives. But what I found at the university was, no need to delve into that. You have to read the story to find that out. And so you can see how chapter 1 and chapter 7 are connected, and how chapter 1 influences Kavoth, and how chapter 1 is very important for the character of Kavoth, inspiring him to investigate things at the university. And on top of that, there will be a second reason for him to go to the university with the Chandrians, and something that they do, blah blah blah. I don't want to spoil, but I hope you can see how to write a great chapter 1, but also on top of that, how to write a great book stemming from a great chapter 1. Okay, a great chapter 1 has to be followed by a great chapter 2, great chapter 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and it has to be connected to the characters, and it has to act as at least to establish something important, right? One thing that maybe motivates the characters, in this particular case, Kavoth wanting to go to the university to learn the name of the wind, like Taborlin the Great. He will have another motivation, as I said, but I hope you can see how this is very crucial. How to write a great book. Well, you have to be great from the beginning to the end. You have to have great mastery over the fundamentals of storytelling. I hope you enjoyed this. Have a nice day. Bye.